In today's tutorial, we're using the latest and greatest GitHub Spark AI from Microsoft in order to build, test, and deploy a web application using CI/CD and agentic Copilot agents that will help us to orchestrate everything. You'll learn how to build a web application using GitHub Spark AI. You'll deploy the web application using GitHub. You'll write automated end-to-end and API tests. You'll create a CI/CD pipeline, and you'll learn how to orchestrate everything. My name is Nikolay Advolodkin. I'm a chief engineer at UltimateQA. Let's dive right in. Today's course, we're going to learn how to build a web application using GitHub Spark, which is the latest no-code software creator from Microsoft. We're going to learn how to deploy the web application using GitHub. We're going to create a CI/CD pipeline with automated testing. We're going to use GitHub Copilot all throughout the process to create all of our code, do pull request reviews, and integrate everything together into a single software development workflow that ultimately makes you significantly more efficient and a lot more empowered to do a better job at your workplace. The technologies that you will use are GitHub Spark, GitHub Actions, Visual Studio Code, GitHub Copilot, Playwright, Copilot Coding Agent, and Next.js is what our website will be coded in. Working with organizations and teams in order to add AI-driven automated testing, CI/CD, and development practices into their workflows. I'm also training teams on automated software testing best practices and AI-driven development as well. So if you want to keep up with me, you'll find all of the social links linked right there. I have a number of free newsletters that allow you to keep up with the latest tips such as Playwright and JavaScript testing and AI-driven development. And then you can follow me on social media in order to see all of the information that I am sharing. Let's Spark, you can quickly build and deploy full-stack web applications, use natural language to describe what you want to build, generate functional apps without extensive coding, deploy applications with minimal setup. In order to get started with GitHub Spark, you will need a GitHub account, which you can grab right here by going to github.com and signing up for an account. And you will also need to register for a GitHub Pro Plus plan that will give you access to GitHub Spark. The GitHub Pro Plus plan allows you access to GitHub Copilot as well as to GitHub Spark. It gives you up to 375 Spark messages included per month. You can purchase more if you want. You can have 10 active app building sessions at a time, unlimited number of apps, and unlimited manual edits. Once you're signed up for GitHub Spark, you will be able to navigate github.com/spark and be able to start using it. Initially, you'll see a user interface that looks very similar to a lot of the typical other AI coding tools such as V0, Replit, Lovable, ChatGPT. They all have this interface where you come, speak into a chat box with natural language, and then you put in a prompt, and then Spark will go ahead and execute your prompt in order to build your application. You'll see that you can build a number of different applications suggested here, which is kind of cool. Media rating tracker. I'm not sure what that means, but I kind of want to click it and see what happens. And then if you've built anything previously, you'll see it down here in your recents, and then you can also have your favorites that you include as well. Actually, the application that we built for this tutorial was created by GitHub Spark so that we can practice with it. But let's go ahead and create a rating tracker, as I'm not sure what that really is, but let's click this button and see exactly what happens. Of course, you can supply any kind of prompt in there that you want. You can build anything that you desire, but in this case, we're just giving this one a shot. Now, what you will see here is on the left-hand side, you'll see the prompt that was provided, and it looks like this is an app where users can rate and review movies, books, and podcasts they've consumed. And then you'll see here that Copilot is thinking, and you'll see the instructions. You'll see a chat box here on the left-hand side where you can iterate in order to improve your application. Over here, you'll see the progress icon and everything that's happening in terms of the app generating the code. While that's generating, I will show you something else. Let's go ahead and open up our Next.js e-commerce app that we will be working for this workshop. What you will see here is the iterate tab that I just showed you where you can make improvements. What you didn't see here, there's a theme tab that allows you to change your theme. This is actually a very cool feature of GitHub Spark that makes it extremely easy to change the theme of your application. So for example, I'm currently in this neon noir, which I actually really like. But if we wanted to come here and become a candy shop theme, we can change that as well. And boom, all of a sudden our website is updated and looks really nice and cute. And actually GitHub Spark does a really good job of doing those kinds of feature updates. There's a tab for your data. Our application has an API backend, and so it's storing a bunch of data there, and especially these are also all the items that can be purchased. We can perform operations with this, such as we can delete items, or we can view it in JSON format. There are prompts that we can supply here as well for how we want to instruct our AI to behave. And then we also have an assets tab. We can upload company logos, restaurant menus. We can have different kinds of audios that we can put in here in order for our application to utilize those assets. We have a code mode, which is very similar to a VSCode view that you're used to seeing, where you get to see all of the files. You get to see the code here on the right-hand side. You can even interact with the code on the right-hand side and edit your code in here. And then you have both code mode and UI mode. And so what you'll see here is the application on the right. You'll see the files on the left and the code here. And so this is, again, also very similar to our coding experience, where we used to have the application on one side and it's being rendered on the other side. So we can actually make modifications here to our app directly and watch them come to life. The other important features that I would like to mention here is actually we can select elements to edit simply by clicking on them. So for example, if we wanted to edit this, we can come here, we can type some changes to make, and let's say, how about change the title to, let's make this an UltimateQA shop. And so now Copilot will start thinking and will start implementing this feature. Let's come back to our other app that has probably now finished. So our Next.js app, it did make the update. It did not make the update where I wanted. It made the update in the index HTML. However, we wanted, of course, to make the update in the UI, but you get the point. Now, there is a mobile view that you can also utilize in order to interact with your application. There are more actions here, such as opening this up in code spaces so that you can work on the application directly. I'll show you how to do that. CodeSpace is a really fantastic tool. It's basically a way for you to have an entire development environment that's exactly the same for everybody else. Actually, it's like having a container with the entire environment, and everybody can work outside of this container. So for example, here you can see we have our application. We can go ahead and run npm install. We can run npm run dev. We have our application here opened in localhost. We have this window that pops up, and let's go ahead and open it. And I will open it in a browser. And so what you'll see is our app here running in the browser. And this is really nice because if we want to do a workshop or we want to collaborate with our team members, we can all work outside of the same code space without having to worry about low machine weirdness, where it works on my machine. I don't know why it works on yours. The final pieces that you may want to know, let's see if our Media Critic app is done. So here is our Media App Critic. Really, it looks really good. As you can see, the UI is super nice. That's not what we're here to cover. Here just to show you the basic functionality of GitHub Spark. If we wanted to publish this, we can publish it. That will create a brand new link that will allow us to visit the site. That link will be available in a few options. It'll be available only to me or only to GitHub users. In the future, I think they're going to allow it to be available to GitHub organizations. And I hope in the future beyond that, they will make this available to the entire public. So you can see here, these are currently the features that are available. And so right now it's only to me and the GitHub users. I can make that publicly accessible as well. And it does give you a link. So if you want to visit this application, for example, here is our app. Super easy, deployed, working. If we wanted to do anything, here we can. Let's go ahead and give you an exercise to do. I've done enough talking. Now it's your turn to do some work. You're going to head over to GitHub Spark and you're going to paste in this e-commerce prompt. Let me show you what that looks like. Here is the create web app prompt that I generated alongside with AI. I collaborated with AI in order to generate this prompt. In our prompts, we want to be as specific as possible. The more direction that you give the AI, the more clarity you create, the more requirements you create, the better it will perform and the less variable the response will be. But so here you can see we're creating basically a technology stack and all of the features. I basically talked to an AI. I think in this case it was Claude that I talked to and told it, hey, I want to build this application. I want it to be a shopping cart app. I want it to be simple. I want it to have some RESTful NPI endpoints. Let's create a prompt for an AI to feed in. And so this is the prompt that we created together. You're going to feed this prompt into GitHub Spark. You're going to let the AI do its magic. Then I want you to push the code into your own repo. You're going to clone the repo. You're going to pull it down. You're going to run npm run dev. You're going to npm install. You're going to do npm run dev. And then you're going to see what happens. And when you come back, I'll show you the solution. In this module, we're going to cover VS Code and GitHub Copilot setup. We will use that once we are set up locally. We'll install our application, and then we will use GitHub Copilot to help us through the entire software development lifecycle. By the end of this module, you'll be able to install and configure VS Code with essential extensions, set up and authenticate GitHub Copilot, install and run the workshop e-commerce application, troubleshoot common development environment issues, use GitHub Copilot features effectively, and configure project-specific AI assistance with Copilot instructions. If you don't already have VS Code installed, head over to code.visualstudio.com, download the appropriate version for your machine, and then use that in order to proceed with the rest of the tutorial. After you've installed VS Code, we're going to go ahead and install GitHub Copilot. So to install GitHub Copilot, you can just do Command-Shift-X or Control-Shift-X on Windows. You can search for Copilot, and here you'll see we have GitHub Copilot, and we have GitHub Copilot Chat. We'll install both of those. It actually wants me to restart, so I'll just go ahead and restart. You will just be installing. You might need to authenticate, and so if you do, just go ahead and authenticate with your GitHub account, and everything will be okay. And in the status bar, you'll be able to see GitHub icon. You can see it up here. You can see it down here. And actually, if you click Command-Shift-I or Control-Shift-I, you will be able to pull up a chat that will allow you to interact with GitHub Copilot. So now, setting up our e-commerce application. At this point, you should have cloned your GitHub repo, and you should have navigated to your repository in your terminal, and then you should have opened it up in Visual Studio Code, install the dependencies using the following script, and then you will run npm run build. So let me show you how to do that here. Let me kill all of these terminals here and start a new one. Here we go. And then you'll run npm run dev. And that should open up our e-commerce application that I built using GitHub Spark. Now, you might actually encounter some issues in your terminal. Maybe your environment is a bit different. Maybe some of your packages are out of date. I'm not sure. But if you encounter any kind of issues, you can actually troubleshoot those with GitHub Copilot. So, for example, if you had run into any kind of errors, let me show you. Maybe you ran into this kind of error inside of your terminal. All you would do is copy it. You would open up this chat, as I mentioned before, Command-Shift-I or Control-Shift-I to open. You would just type something in, like, you type something like that, you'd paste the error, you will put your AI into agent mode, which means it's going to execute your commands, versus ask mode, which means you'll just be having a conversation with it, making a plan, just like in ChatGPT. You'll pick the model that you want to use. I highly recommend GPT-5 or Claude Sonnet 4 and above. Those are the best for software development tasks. And then you'll hit send in order for it to execute. And you might need to do a few iterations until you get to a stable enough point where your application is working. Now, also, you may encounter situations where your application loads, but it's blank. In that case, pull up your app, go to the console, see if there are any errors. You can right-click and copy your console, paste it in your chat, and have the Copilot fix those issues as well. And keep iterating until your app works. It may take a few tries. It may take very little tries. It depends on the state of your system. However, it should be solved by the AI. It almost always is. You'll see some sample Copilot prompts for troubleshooting. Fix this NPM error and pasting the error. This dependency seems to be missing, and so on. You will have been successful with this once you have a working application. Let's talk about configuring Copilot instructions. Copilot instructions are extremely critical to any kind of AI, into any kind of agentic workflow and implementation. You can think of Copilot instructions as basically setting up a framework or standard operating procedures for how an AI should operate. These are very common in all of the agentic tools. They exist in ChatGPT, where you can set your preferences. They exist in Claude Code. They exist in Perplexity. They exist in all of these AI tools where you specify how you want the AI to operate. In fact, this is part of context engineering, which is becoming a new and important paradigm in the world of software development. Context engineering means that you are gathering and creating the appropriate context for the AI to behave as you desire it to behave. Because these days, the AIs are really smart. A lot of times, the mistakes that they make are a result of assumptions due to a lack of context. And so now a lot of our job is becoming to provide the relevant and valuable context to these AIs to do their job as efficiently as possible. And so your goal is to create Copilot instruction file by following the instructions here and put it inside of the .github folder that exists and compile these Copilot instructions. You'll see some of the stuff that I have in here, but I challenge you to go beyond this. Think about how you want your Copilot to behave, and also think about how, and also maybe collaborate with another AI tool that you like to come up with better Copilot instructions. See what you can come up with, put it in that folder. When you come back, I'll show you what I've come up with. Welcome back. How did you do? Hopefully you came up with a really nice Copilot instruction script. Let me show you what I came up with. Here are my Copilot instructions. A lot of these actually were auto-generated for me by GitHub Copilot. I'll show you how to do that in a moment. Actually, a lot of these were actually generated for me by GitHub Copilot itself. I'll show you exactly how to do that. So here I have my repo. If you come in here and create an issue, you can actually get GitHub Copilot to help you out with it. I'll show you that later in a moment. But right now, let me show you how Copilot can create instructions for us. If you have an issue and Copilot starts some work, so you can come here and create any issue that you want. You can ask for any feature. You can ask for a bug fix. In this case, for example, I said add 2 more API tests to test card functionality. Now, when I did that, I can come in here in the settings and add Copilot as my AI pair programmer. And Copilot goes in and starts new branch that does the work to implement the issue. We can come here, look at the new issue that it started, and here is what it's working on. It gives a summary, implementation details, the test results, and so on, and it even links to the issue that it fixed. However, what we'll also see here is that Copilot can set things up for us by allowing us to implement a Copilot instructions. And so if we click this, see, it creates a new issue called Setup Copilot Instructions, and then it's going to do those using best practices for Copilot coding agent in our repo, and then is going to implement that. And that's exactly how my Copilot instructions were generated using that process. And you can try that process yourself. So a lot of this was GitHub Copilot generated, especially the repo specific stuff. However, I'll show you some of my own custom stuff that I've added over the months that I've been using this that make my life significantly easier. One of the sections that is very valuable for me is the test execution section. I've added a number of commands here that make it significantly easier to work and iterate with AIs. One of the things is to run tests in the background using terminal commands. Another one is anytime we're running end-to-end browser tests, to run it with no reporters in CLI because we don't want those reporters to keep popping up and pausing our execution and ultimately slowing down the entire workflow. Plus, there are many other things that I implemented that will be very valuable for you to implement as well. Another thing that I will throw out there, for example, with end-to-end testing, AI currently does not do a good job. It tends to create too many tests. It tends to create a lot of tests that are totally wrong in terms of their implementation. And then it will create tests that work, but are actually stupid, like that don't make any sense. For example, I had an AI write some API tests where instead of exercising the APIs of the app, what it did was interact with the DOM of the HTML in order to modify different states of the app. It wasn't even API tests at all. So I wasn't making any kind of network requests. So be careful with that. And so I've put in information in here like don't use a browser for API testing. So you, of course, can copy and steal them. In fact, I am going to add a link to a Git gist of my updated Copilot instructions that I'm regularly updating so that we can share them amongst our teams and engineers. And you can have access to it. I'll leave that link down below. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link down below into my Copilot instructions and my Claude instructions that I'm using and regularly updating in order for all of our teams to be on the same page so that we don't have to keep recreating these instructions for the different AIs. And you'll be able to just click the link and grab it down below. Let's talk about some best practices for AI-assisted development. Number one is provide clear context. Write descriptive comments before coding. Reference your project's patterns and standards. Be specific about requirements and constraints. Number two is validate AI suggestions. Review generated code for correctness. AI is constantly generating nonsense. You still have to review it. Test the functionality thoroughly. When AI generates nonsense, it tends to break stuff as well. And number three is ensure code follows your project standards. Another best practice is to use Copilot as a collaborator. Think of Copilot as your junior to mid-level developer that can provide you help on menial tasks. And so you can ask it questions about unfamiliar code, request explanations for complex logic, and get suggestions for alternative approaches. And number four is maintain code quality. Don't accept suggestions blindly. Refactor AI-generated code when needed, and ensure consistent style across your code base. Let's talk about automated testing with AI today. Automated testing is one of those activities that most people don't really enjoy to do. It's kind of a pain in the butt. We really just want to release features, but we know that we have to do testing and we know that it's important, but man, is it a lot of extra work. And so now with agentic AI, we have the ability for it to help us and assist in automated software testing and CI/CD. And so in these portions of the course, I will show you how to implement automated software testing with your Copilot. So now that you are familiar with a little bit about how to use Copilot inside of your VSCode, you have an exercise to create a Playwright test suite with AI. There is a prompt file here that's located in there that tells the AI exactly how to execute the test, create and execute the tests. Feed that into the Copilot, and I'll show you how to feed files into Copilot and then have it implement that feature. So for example, here's a primary prompt for GitHub Copilot. Okay, create Playwright tests. There's information here, tests needed. I minimized it down to 2 tests because if it's longer, you might spend 5 to 20 minutes in numerous iteration cycles of the AI trying to work through the tests, which is okay. And actually the fact that you're already in this repo, you're going to have the test. So what I actually recommend you do is you come and you delete the tests that currently exist. I recommend you get rid of this entire tests folder and the Playwright config and let the AI generate everything from scratch. In fact, let's do that together. And now you can increase this to as many tests as you want. I recommend keeping it smaller because, as I mentioned previously, AI can do a kind of a pretty bad job at automated browser testing. API testing, it does a bit better, but it does tend to hallucinate a lot and go crazy on how many tests it needs. So why don't we start here and feed this into our Copilot? So Command-Shift-I to open. If you want to feed Copilot with context, very important, right? So first we want to feed it instructions. So Command// will allow us to look for Copilot instructions. We want to supply those. And also we Command/ in order to feed it tests, create Playwright tests.md. And now we say, go ahead and create Playwright tests. Make sure you are in agent mode. Make sure you have a good model to execute with. If you don't, you might be stuck in a very long feedback cycle. And I'm not sure if you will ever produce anything valuable using this process, but let's give this a shot and see what happens. And so this is the first time that you're seeing Copilot working and executing information. Actually, so here you see Copilot using the instructions and the playlist test, and it's going through the files, understanding everything, and then it's going to go ahead and create the tests. So upon completion, we have a few items that are generated. So you'll see the 3 files that were changed. There was a playwright config API spec and a browser spec that were created. We can choose to keep them, all of them, which means that we are happy with them. But first we want to review this, as we previously mentioned. So let's look at playwright config. Expect a timeout of 30,000. I don't like that. That's way too long. I'm going to change that to 10. Other timeouts. Let's see. It's using and base URL, turning off trace screenshots and videos, project using Chromium. Really good. Nice and simple. I like it. We can choose to keep this one. By the way, we can review this after. You know why? Because I totally missed this button over here, is that the Copilot has stopped for us to execute the npm run build command, and then it's going to test it. So let's do that. Let's hit continue, let it build, and let's see how it continues to iterate to work on our software and our tests. There we go. It's continuing to proceed. And we can tell it to run the tests and make sure they pass. Let's add some context here of our Copilot instructions, and also that's good enough. See, so now it's doing the installation for us. Now it's going to run that web app. It's going to set the base URL. I love that. And it's running with no reporters. Trust me, this is so valuable. I've spent so much time opening and closing those HTML reports from Playwright. So it looks like a test is failing, which is good. It's going to keep working on this test until it's passing. This is the value of the AI in the background. So let me show you one of the beautiful things around. Beautiful. So looks like the tests have finished. Let's actually review the work that was done to make sure that it's valuable. So here is a browser test, for example. Let's see, homepage displays featured products. We're going to the page. We're expecting some products to be visible. We're getting a products card, and we're expecting to have 4 products. That's nice. Actually, in the future, I'm going to update my Copilot instructions to not include comments in the test code unless a why is needed versus a what's happening, right? Because this code is pretty much self-documenting. Here, we're doing another test of adding to cart increments card badge. That's a cool escape. And now we're checking that it has 1 text. Really good. We can go ahead and keep this one. This is an API test right here. So this time the API test is working as expected. A get products returns full product list. We're hitting the get products, getting back a response, getting success on the data. It's an array to be truthy, and then to be sample products.length. Where are we getting that? Okay. And then we are checking that it has some of these properties. Okay. Good API test. I don't like this addition. You can see, honestly, it's not perfect with following the Copilot instructions because it lost one of the things that we were requesting, which is that test end-to-end run with reporter none. That's not a good addition. I don't like this. We're going to remove that because I do want it to run with no reporter. End-to-end browser, that's better. An API, yes. And in CI, this is the command that we can use. So this looks good. We'll keep it. This is good. A timeout. Let's do 10,000. And so now here is where some of the cool magic happens. Let's look at all of our changes. We have a few things that we've modified. A README, we have our tests, our CI YAML. This is from a previous. Here are the few things that have changed. Let's go ahead and push this up. Let's say add tests, commit. And I really hate this source control part of GitHub because it doesn't always provide the best messages there. And so I like to check everything here. We're on workshop branch. Let's go ahead and push this up into the branch. Now is where everything is going to connect. It's going to be really, really cool. So in our workshop branch, you can see this is what was just pushed up. I'm going to push this up to this tutorial branch. So now we have a tutorial branch that has some pushes. Let's do a compare and pull request. So we can just leave it as is and say create pull request. And I'll show you what we can do with GitHub Copilot, which is really awesome. We can add GitHub Copilot to actually review our code. I also have GitHub here, CodeRabbit AI. If you haven't tried it, go and give it a shot. It's a free tool that you can use also for pull requests. But here we're learning about GitHub Copilot. And so Copilot can actually review our pull request and make us recommendations. While Copilot is giving us recommendations, I'm going to challenge you with another exercise. What I want you to do is create a new issue in your repo. It can be a bug. It can be a new feature that you want to implement. Create that issue, add Copilot to it to fix that issue, and then go and deal with that pull request and merge it in. That is your challenge. The best way for you to learn is actually to work on this and implement it. So that is your challenge. Go and practice, because that is the only way that you will. By the way, here is the pull request that we just created. Here is Copilot that we added for the review. Here's CodeRabbit that automatically creates a summary, and it's another free tool that you can use in order to do pull requests. But here we're talking about Copilot that you can use. So while our review is in progress, let's take a look at some of the suggestions here provided by Copilot. So here's Copilot's review. It left a comment telling us a pull request overview and providing us some information. And it looks like it's reviewed 6 changed files and generated 3 comments. Let's take a look at the recommendations here. So look at the first recommendation. It's telling us to use a card badge instead of a text one. Now, in general, that might be a good recommendation. In this case, our test was asserting that we added one item to a cart and we expected to have one item in the cart. In this case, this suggestion is not valuable. And so we're actually going to ignore it. But if you wanted to, you could commit this change. But we're going to resolve this conversation and say, we're going to give this a thumbs down, and we're going to resolve this conversation. Let's take a look at the other options. Well, this is really interesting. It's telling us to properly type the GitHub Spark object instead of hiding the TypeScript warnings. Maybe that's a good idea. Right now, that's not important. And let's see the last suggestion. I actually really like this suggestion. So we can come here and commit it. Finally, we have something valuable. Now, this is a pull request, and this pull request was reviewed by AI. You can also come in here and make comments as well. So for example, I don't know, let's say that you want to update something. You can come in here, leave a comment, and you can actually tag Copilot to implement this or to fix it or to do something else. And then it will go off and work on whatever you tell it to do. You can even ask it questions. So now at this point, you should start seeing the beauty in everything that we've been doing so far. You can have AI work on your issues. Inside of your repo, you can have it implement tests or implement features or CI or whatever. You can have AI reviewing your pull requests, and you just have to be the organizer of all of the agents working together. That is the future of software development, is us becoming context engineers, making sure that the AI has enough context to operate correctly. And we are managing a number of different AIs, like an orchestrator of a symphony, in order to become significantly more efficient at our jobs. So your last exercise here is to go ahead and implement a CI/CD pipeline. You have a prompt here that will work. You know how to use Copilot. Go ahead and implement it and work with the AI to fix it. It should actually be one of the easiest things that you do at this point. You will know that you have succeeded when you've got CI fully working in your system. And in order to make sure that you don't cheat, go ahead and scroll up to the workflows folder in GitHub and delete the current CI pipeline, and then work with AI to implement this. Dear friends, we have come to the end of this tutorial. I hope you really enjoyed learning about GitHub Spark and using agentic workflows in order to significantly optimize your software development practices. I know I've had a blast. In this tutorial, you've learned AI-powered app generation. You've learned AI-assisted coding. You've learned how to use TypeScript and React in order to make all of that happen. Really, I mean, the AI did all of the work for us. We implemented end-to-end and API tests, a CI/CD pipeline, and we learned how to orchestrate all of that inside of GitHub so that AI is helping us through the entire process. Some of the final thoughts of wisdom that I would leave you with is use AI as a development partner. It helps to accelerate development velocity, improves code quality through suggestions, helps with learning and exploration, and handles repetitive tasks efficiently. Use testing as a continuous process. Shift-left testing, risk-based prioritization, automation at scale, and continuous feedback are all significantly easier when we're using tools such as GitHub Copilot inside of our workflows. Also remember that quality is everyone's responsibility. Even though AI is deploying and writing the code, let's ensure that we're reviewing that code before we actually are pushing it to production. Also, if you like, I've left a bonus section of what you can do from this point forward, how you can continue to progress and grow from here, what immediate actions you can take, some short-term goals, and some long-term vision for you as well, how you can grow into an AI-powered engineer dominating your workplace and amazing salaries. I've left you some amazing resources as well, should you want to continue learning. And friends, one of the biggest values that I get from delivering these tutorials is, number one, sharing my knowledge with you and elevating you. That's an absolute pleasure. However, what I really need is feedback. I need feedback about how I did, what you liked about the workshop, what you didn't like, because I can then use that feedback to create a new tutorial that will serve you even better. So there's a link here in the conclusions file, and we'll drop it down below as well, where please go in and provide me any feedback. The number two support that you can show me is follow me on social media. All of the links are here. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and just keep in touch with me. I release these kind of tutorials all the time, and you'll be the first to know when they go live. And the final thing that I would mention is that I am an independent contractor. If you enjoyed my work, if you think it's valuable, share it with your network. I help organizations implement automated software testing and CI/CD using AI all over the world, and I can help you and your organization do as well. And as you can see, of course, I do trainings on the kind of best practices around SDLC, using AI, using many different types of tools. I'm an expert in C#, Java, JavaScript, and all of the different types of tools that belong in those ecosystems. And so if you and your organization need help, reach out to me. Let's have a conversation, and I would be really glad to do so. With that said, it's been such a pleasure. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll catch you in a future tutorial. Peace.